Good morning, everyone. It is a beautiful day today. I'm going to go over finishing up the subwoofer wiring for my Challenger. I didn't do a video on the other install. Sometimes when I'm doing stuff, especially for the first time, I don't want to record it or anything like that, just because I'm learning as I go type situation. And I know a lot of us want to do it that way. So I did not cover the install of the two front door speakers, the tweeters in the dash, or the rear speakers. There's a lot of videos out there on those as well. I think it's been kind of overdone. One thing that I have not seen overdone is installing a subwoofer in the factory location. The majority of these cars, I think pretty much all of them, have a spot in the rear deck for an 8-inch subwoofer. I have my deck in now. Yeah, you can't even see it. I have the speaker installed. I actually had the speaker in my subwoofer. It was a free air dual voice coil Pioneer subwoofer. I took it out of my Suburban, dropped it in here, perfect fit. Used some M5 screws is what you'll need. I just had some Allen head ones laying around with some washers. I threw those on, it worked perfect. I have that installed. I have both voice coils hooked up. You don't want to run a dual voice coil sub without both coils hooked up. You can damage the speaker. You don't have to go dual voice coil. It was just one that I bought really cheap years ago. I mean, the thing's like almost 10 years old now probably, but it still works. I thought I'd throw it in, see how it sounded. I also had a Soundstream Picasso Nano, what was this? PN1.650D. It's a 650 watt monoblock amplifier. Sorry, I thought someone was coming. And I'm going to put that in the trunk. What I'm going to do here is I'll kind of go over how I did everything. This is not how you have to do it. This was for ease of installation, I'll say, for me. Some people want to go whole hog, whatever, it's up to you, however you want to do it. This is what I did. And I'm going to kind of give you a rundown on some of the wiring I'm going to do, stuff like that. So first of all, what I did was, I'm going to turn you around here. Underneath here, let me get a flashlight. There are 3 plastic clips that hold this rear deck cover on. Let's see if I can get in there and you can kind of see it without pulling these clips back out. In there is the subwoofer. What I did is I tapped off of the Crutchfield speaker adapter that went to my speakers. I tapped off of that down to the speaker wire. I'm going to use what's called the high level input for this, which is not RCA cables. It takes the speaker input and it uses that as the input to the amplifier. And I had some extra for 12 gauge, some 12 gauge wire here. What I did is I just kind of, it came across here. I ran it down here, right along here. That way it's not in anything. It's not in the way of anything. Then another thing I did is I picked up a long time ago some fabric electrical tape, and that's what I wrapped this in. You can kind of see it there. So I'll tuck this all up later. But what I did is I wrapped it there, and I'm going to set this up as low impact on the vehicle as I can. I don't want to have holes drilled in the body, anything like that. I also want to make this set up so that number one, it looks good. Number two, if you want to take it out, you can take it out and you don't have to worry about holes anywhere, wires, you know, it looks like it had a system in it. You don't have to worry about any of that. I do have to get a couple of things, a fuse tap, and then an inline fuse for the amplifier. I'm going to get those yet today, but I'm going to do as much of the wiring and the setup as I can. So what I'm going to do is, my car doesn't have the spare. I just have this little foam insert here. What I did is I ran the speaker wire down through here, pulled this out, and it comes up through this little drain hole, okay? I'm going to take my positive battery cable. I'm going to come off of, this is called a tip-em. That's what Chrysler calls them, Dodge, whatever, Fiat, whatever the company is now, Stellantis. It's called a tip-em, totally integrated power module. I remember these from back in 2010, 2012. These were an absolute nightmare. The amount of failures I saw on these was absolutely bonkers. So when you find a fuse to tap into, don't tap into one that may have something to do with the vehicle, you know, or a sensor or anything like that, because you can really screw this thing up. And it's, if you can even get them, they're hundreds, if not thousands of dollars now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my power for the amp, come right off of here, and I'm going to ground to right there. Okay. Now I have the Alpine 6-speaker system. This is fuse number 27. It's a 25 amp fuse. That fuse is for the amplifier. If you don't have that fuse, it's going to be hard to see. But if you can look in and see terminals on both sides of that, you might still have a circuit there. So if you turn on the vehicle and you have a voltmeter on there and you get 12 volts while the vehicle's off, that's a live circuit, so you can use that fuse. If you don't have any wiring there, you need to find somewhere else to come off of. But this is what I'm going to use for my remote turn on for the amplifier. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to get a fuse tap, and I'm going to run a fuse tap on here. And then when I come off of here for the amplifier, I'm just going to run an inline, probably a 25 amp fuse maybe. I'm not sure, or actually I need to run a 50. I'm going to run a 50 amp fuse on there. So that's how I'm going to do it. I don't want to come off the battery terminals at all. I'm going to come off the power module. The amplifier itself, I debated screwing it into this foam, but what I'm going to do is this actually works pretty good. I had this Velcro here. I'm just going to take this Velcro, stick it on the amplifier and the foam, and this should hold up pretty good. As far as wiring goes, these are the 3 wires I have. This is a ground wire. It's a 10 gauge. It's called primary wire. It's automotive wire. It's 10 gauge, 100% copper. Watch some videos on car audio and like oxygen free and tinned copper, all that kind of stuff. You'll find out a lot of different things. Like this is just cheaper stuff here. This is solid copper, so its power characteristics are going to be slightly different than some of the other stuff you'll see out there. This is also 10 gauge. This is going to be from the battery to the amplifier. Now, the key is on here, it has a handy little chart. So my amplifier has 2 25 amp fuses for a total of 50 amps. So right here, total amp circuit, 50. I can run 10 gauge. This is saying up to 10 feet. But I'm going like maybe 3.5, 4, we'll say 4 feet tops. So a single 10 gauge, 100% copper wire is okay for that. This is remote turn on wire. There's not much current on here. It's just a 12 volt signal to kick on the amp. So this is 16 gauge. I can run quite a few amps on there. 24 amps is what I can run, but I'm going to be running maybe 2, if that. So that's what I'm going to run. When I get my other stuff, I'll kind of go over the whole install on that. But I'm going to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that electrical tape. I'm going to take all these and I'm going to put them together. I'm going to wrap that electrical tape on there so it looks more factory. And then I'll get on my fuses and things like that. And then, we will continue from there. All right, everyone. I have this together and I apologize. I get really bad about working on these things and forgetting to put the camera on and actually record the process. So what you're seeing is almost complete. I have to put everything back together, but I'll kind of show you what I did, how I ran things, and just kind of the overall installation of this entire setup. It wasn't terrible. I've done a lot worse. I mean, a lot of times if you're running an amp, it's kind of nice having the battery in the trunk because I don't have to run a cable all the way from the front of the car to the back of the car. That's usually the worst. And when I do that, usually I just put a whole amplifier setup in and run speaker wires and everything because you usually have to pull seats, you got to pull trim, you got to pull everything to run a cable anyway. So I figure why not just do it all. This situation, I just wanted to put in the sub, battery was in the trunk, made it a lot easier to do the install. So I'm going to kind of go over everything here. Okay, here we go. Lighting isn't the greatest. I'm going to use my flashlight here. Okay, these are the wires from the speakers. One wire is tapped into the right rear speaker. I don't think there's clips for that. The other wires go to the sub, which sits right here. And I used that felt electrical tape. I wrapped a whole bunch on here because there's kind of a sharp edge here and it's going to sit like that. So that's all taken care of. Come over here toward the battery area. Let's get some light on it. See if that works. Maybe. Let's see what we can get going here. I don't know. It's always fun. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Here's my harness that I built. Again, I used the felt tape. I put a zip tie here to hold everything while I was taping it. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Here's the ground wire, 10 millimeter here with a spade connector. I crimped it on, and then I used some shrink tubing here. Came across here. These are soldered together. This is actually an 8 gauge fuse block down to the 10 gauge. I soldered those together. It's got a 50 amp, what they call a maxi fuse in here. Let's see if I can get this thing out one-handed. I've got a 50 amp fuse in here. The reason I went 50 is because this has two 25 amp fuses. So I just stayed with the max on there. And you can tuck that down. It doesn't matter what orientation it's in or anything like that. I haven't put the Tip'em cover back on yet. I've just kind of been running everything. Here is a fuse block that I went off the amplifier. I put a 7.5 amp fuse in for the remote, just because you don't need anything crazy, like I said earlier. It came with a butt connector. I just spliced or crimped this on, put some shrink tubing on here, not just to make it look better, but to kind of protect it from the elements and stuff like that. Kind of run it along here. You have a spot here on your Tip'em box where those wires run out. So they just kind of sit like that, and then it runs out this way. And then I went down underneath. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this right now. I just have it sitting here, and all of my wires come up underneath here. I have slack under here, so I can lift this up if I need to, and work on there if I need to work on there. The amplifier itself, for right now, I think it'll work. I just took Velcro and stuck it on here with Velcro, and it's on there pretty good. I used the high level inputs. Don't mind those, I gotta cut those, I was testing. I used the high level inputs from the speakers. So this is the right rear speaker of the car coming into the high level input. There's a ground wire coming back here. The ground is here. So this is chassis ground, and then this is that remote, not remote, but the speaker ground. So they go into the ground terminal on the amplifier. Here's my remote turn on for the amplifier. Here is the power for the amplifier. I was running this pretty heavy, and nothing is even temp-wise. It's not even working the amplifier. Here are your speakers, or to the subwoofers where that goes to. So I have it set this way because right there are the controls to adjust the amplifier. I always start with everything at the lowest, and then I kind of go mid, and then I adjust from there. It is on right now, but the car is in its like accessory mode. When you shut it off and close and open doors and stuff like that, a lot of times the ECU will stay on. This light will eventually turn off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this open, and hopefully this will turn off and I don't have to worry about it. If not, I'll find another fuse in the fuse block that I can go off of that's driven strictly by accessory power, and then we'll go from there. This shouldn't have any issues. As far as what I used, I didn't get too crazy. I've done enough little amplifier setups. Don't mind my mess here. It was getting pretty wild. In the past, that I bought these little, I don't know, what are these even called? Just ferrules is what I call them. Yeah. So these are specifically for amplifiers. If you've ever done an amplifier and they have screw terminals, and you take your wires and you just twist them, stick them in and screw them, it'll usually cut the wires, it'll crush them, it usually, and it doesn't look great. So what I do is I bought this setup. This actually, you slide the wire in here and then this into the amplifier and crimp down, and it crimps on this, so your wires don't get damaged. In this setup, I used these for the power and the ground, which is a 10 gauge. I used this for the remote, which is a 16 gauge. And then for the speaker wires, which were 14 gauge, I used these. You do not crimp these. You just twist your wires and slide these over the wires. And then when you screw down the terminals, it crimps onto that. Cheap kit, I think got off Amazon or something like that. I've done a few amplifier setups and it works great for those. I used these for the high level inputs to go high level input. This is a 18 to 22 gauge, high level input into the 14 gauge of the speaker wire. This is 16 and 14, and these actually have shrink tube on them. So what I've learned, if you notice, the shrink tube extends past the spade connector. I connect them together and then I shrink tube them, because this actually shrinks over and it's a nightmare to cut that to get it to fit right. So that's what I used for my high level inputs. This is a little shrink tube kit. These are all just Amazon specials, basically. Little shrink tube kit, different sizes. I mainly used like this size and this size for most of the wiring. And then, all right, let's get into here. These ring terminals were too big, so I wound up going with this size ring terminal. There's still a 10-12 gauge, but it's for a 1/4 inch stud instead of 1/2 inch. So these actually worked a little bit better. Maxi fuse, that's 50 amp, got a spare in case I need it. The fuse thing that I got, it's called a maxi fuse holder. It is rated at 60 amps. I went with a 50. It does not come with a fuse. I went with a 50 amp because I don't want to go higher than what the amplifier is rated. All of this stuff I got from my local Runnings. If this is a fuse tap here, if you have a Runnings, a Tractor Supply, stuff like that, you can find these things here. There is absolutely no need to go out and spend 70, 80, 90% more on stereo installation gear when this stuff is essentially the same. The only difference is, like, that fuse holder is for a maxi fuse. A lot of your amplifier installation kits will come with one that is a long tubular one, and it comes with a round fuse. And then those, you put your wires into each end. There's usually a cap that screws on, and then you just crimp them down, things like that. So it's personal preference. I have a Runnings close to me, so that's what I went with, is Runnings, because that's all I have near me. And it works. It's a 50 amp fuse. That's all you really need. Let's get into this. To tap into the factory speakers, I used this kit. It's a tap kit. So basically the way these work is I use the 14-16 gauge. So basically the way these work is this goes over your primary wire that you're tapping into, basically, and you take a pair of pliers on the end and you just squish it, and this will snap. When it snaps, it's seated, and then you crimp this on your third wire, your third leg, and then that will actually slide into here and make the connection. It's a great way to tap into wires without having to cut, splice, anything like that. I do not use them in areas that aren't weather tight, though, because of corrosion. These are not waterproof or anything like that, so I stay away from that. As you can tell, I use the 14-16 gauge the most. On this one, I tried to use the 12 and 10. Didn't work. It cut the insulation, but it did not cut into the wire to make a connection. So I'd find out why my amplifier wasn't working. So if you guys have any questions, again, I apologize. I started working on this, I got going on it, and it's one of those situations where I just kind of forgot to set up a camera. So if you have any questions, hit me up. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have on this. I know there's a lot of people out here that would like to get a little bit better sound out of their Challenger. The sound systems in these leave a little to be desired unless you get, the higher end one, or like the one that has the subs in the trunk. And even people replace those because they're not great. It wasn't a bad install. I took my time with it, so it took longer than normal. I wasn't rushing anything. But it went pretty well. It was pretty straightforward. It looks like my lights are off here, but my power is still on. So I am going to do some research, and I'll get back to you guys, because I'm going to find a circuit in here that is accessory only. So that when the car turns on, it kicks on the amplifier, because that light is off. Everything is off in the car. So that tells me that this should be off. If you don't wire this to your accessory, it will run your battery down. I mean, granted, you have the LED going, you're not feeding a signal through here, but the amp is on and it will run your battery down. So I'm gonna find another circuit, and I'll get back to you guys and give you an update. I might just find it and record it as I hook it up to that circuit so we know what's going on. All right, we'll see you in a few. All right, my GoPro died, so I had to switch to my phone. Okay, the documentation did not say anything about this on the amplifier, but I have seen this in the past. The high level input that I'm using actually provides a remote turn on for the amplifier. So right now, as you can tell, no fuse block. My remote wire, I snipped it, and I'm actually putting it here just in case I need it. But I had it disconnected because I was actually looking for a switched circuit that would turn on when the car turned on, because everything I was plugging into was keeping it on. So I had unplugged the fuse block, and I was plugging in fuses back into here, and I was checking, and I turned on the car to turn on the stereo to see what was fused and what wasn't. When I did that, the amp turned on. So the documentation could have been better. I guess I never thought about trying it using the high level input to turn on the amplifier, because I've never used high level inputs. I always use the RCA inputs, which you do have to have a remote turn on. But using the high level turns everything on. So I no longer have to run a remote wire. I'm leaving the wiring the same. I'm not going to redo anything. That's my multimeter there. So right now, I'm going to put everything back together here. This back on. And that almost looks factory in there. Okay, that's what she looks like. I'm going to vacuum this out here. But we are good to go.